Greetings, friend, and welcome to the Between the Covers podcast, where we are working every day to remove the self-limiting beliefs that are preventing us from becoming the heroes of our own stories. I am Marcus Spar, and I just want to remind you that if you are benefiting from this podcast, then I would greatly appreciate it if you left a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's iTunes or if it's Spotify or somewhere else. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then please give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads. In podcast land, this is coming out a week after I had my soapbox episode about hypocrisy. Thank you, Odin. Appreciate that. He's just now getting himself settled onto the love seat behind me. And in reality, this is just the day after that recording. And I'm wanting to have something much more inspiring and even easier to talk about. So today, I want to talk about the power of creativity. This is something that I have experienced in my own work with clients within the changes that I've been trying to make in my own life, and honestly, just with my own creative endeavors with art and with writing and creating adventures in tabletop role-playing games. This is something that you actually see a lot within young children, is their creativity. They are constantly imagining different things with the world around them. They want to use their creativity in order to explore the world. And it's a great way for them to connect with others and, let's face it, even learn the rules of what it is to be creative with others. I think of how many kids, and this was even something I remember doing as a young kid, we would be playing like some kind of game and there is a fight or a war or something that's going on. And it's kind of hard to have winners when everyone wants to be the winner and everyone is then arguing about why that, I don't know, that water balloon shouldn't have counted or that Nerf dart shouldn't have counted. There was something that was causing an issue to where it's like, no, I'm still in the game. I still want to have a chance to win. And we learn through this use of our creativity how to navigate socially with other people. It's something that as an adult, I still do whenever I get together to play games with my friends. When the fellowship gets together and we start rolling dice, what we end up doing is we use our own imaginations and we communicate and we explore what it is to move from one place to another to try and complete our objectives. And sometimes things don't always go according to plan, or someone has a completely different idea of what is going to take place, and we end up having, we'll say, aspirations that end up butting heads with each other. And if we look outside of just playing games in general, there is so much that our creativity can do. Now, I have not been shy in previous episodes to admit that I'm really not that much of a sports individual. However, I have heard so many examples and many anecdotes, which again, anecdotes are not evidence. They show more of a correlation than causation. But there are so many people that will share about how using their imagination to envision themselves winning or envision themselves scoring the point or making the basket or getting the ball down the field in order to get it in the hands of whatever person is going to take it the furthest. These things are actually incredible and even powerful because our brains, as odd as it sounds, our brains are not that great at separating fantasy from reality. You can have someone who is going through something horrible, or not even horrible. Let's just say they're going through something stressful. They have a deadline that they have to meet, and they're not certain how they're going to get this project done on time without spending a lot of late nights in order to give themselves the time that they need to complete their objectives. When someone is going through that and they are envisioning that things are going to go terribly, a lot of times things go terribly. There's a reason why we call some of these things self-fulfilling prophecies. And coming from a pro at self-fulfilling prophecies, we tend to do a great job of envisioning the worst case scenario or the bad outcomes to these prophecies, I guess. We'll just keep calling them prophecies. However, people who envision the good outcomes, they actually kind of trick their brain into believing that this good outcome is what's going to happen. A great personal story about this is when I was doing some of my own recovery work around my porn use and unwanted sexual behaviors. I had, in this online course that I was going through, there were 2 assignments that we had to do. And one was called the secret screenplay, where we were supposed to take a pornographic fantasy and pretty much write it out as a screenplay, beat by beat, action by action. And then we also had the sacred screenplay, where we did the same thing, but it wasn't an unwholesome fantasy. It was more of a fantasy of how something was going to turn out well, how we were going to take some brave step to do something that we've always wanted to do. What are the potential roadblocks that we're going to come across, and how do we overcome it and ultimately have this incredible conclusion to the story? And this is how bizarre this can be sometimes. I remember completing these the first time through, and when I got done with the sacred screenplay, I looked at it and I'm like, wow, this feels more of a fantasy than the secret screenplays, which were absolutely out there. Because for me personally, that's how little I would actually look at the potential positive outcomes to some kind of situation. Yet, our brains, they do not know the difference between something that happened in the past and something that's happening now, which is why with some of the inner child work that I do with some of my clients, when they find themselves dysregulated and they either experience something like some kind of action, or they hear something and it reminds them of something that they had heard that became a negative core belief within their bodies and their minds. In those moments, the brain does not separate that what is happening now is not the same as what happened in the past. What happened in the past is happening now, so we need to do the same thing that we did to cope with this past experience as we did in the past, which tends to lead us to our unhealthy or unwanted coping mechanisms. This is the power of creativity. We can have the ability to craft very different outcomes to our life experiences just based on how we think about it, how we can creatively explore the different outcomes and honestly look at something that is positive. And I want to pose a question, and I know that this isn't for everyone. Not everyone has this experience. But if you're like me, I will play conversations with people that I haven't had yet in my head. And what I often do is I will spend a lot of time and energy looking at how are they going to react to this statement? How difficult of a conversation is this going to be? How am I going to need to defend myself? And there's that thinking. There is that thinking that this is going to be a difficult thing to talk about. This is going to be something that I will need to become protective and defensive over. And whenever that happens, and I actually go and I have that conversation, surprise, surprise, it rarely ever turns out the way that I expect it to. And I create a lot of headaches, a lot of heartache by spending so much time expecting that the worst case scenario is going to happen. Is that something that you've experienced? Have you had the experience of playing out future conversations in your head with an expectation that it's going to be something that is going to be horrible, horrific, that's going to make you triggered and dysregulated? Well, if so, you're in good company. If not, man, I wish I could do that without... I wish I could look at this kind of stuff without getting so stuck in my head of the horrible conclusions that I anticipate. I have worked with people in the past where they had an experience as a child that was very painful and has contributed to some of the beliefs that are holding them back. When this has happened, it's actually been quite incredible when we just use our creativity to say, hey, what if you now were to go back and talk to this younger version of yourself? What would you say to them? How would you give them what they needed? And we kind of go through a guided meditation to actually engage with these younger version of themselves and give them what it is that they needed that they didn't get when they were growing up. We are using our creativity to create such a bridge of connection and support with these different parts inside of us. And these do wonders to help us heal from these hurts and these hang-ups and these disappointments. This is something I have experienced in my own life. I have seen many, many people go through the same thing. And again, I will point out, how does this work? Because our brains aren't great with time. They're really not. I think a great example of this comes with, I think a great example of how our brains are more used to routines than they are to timelines can actually be described through the grieving process. One of the reasons why grief is so challenging for so many people is because when you lose someone or something that is very near and dear to you, you have become so accustomed to waking up and having this person, this pet, or maybe even a certain house over your head. When you come home, you're so used to seeing these people that you love and you care for. And when you lose them, our brains really struggle with that loss because, again, our brains don't like to change. They don't like things to change. So you might have someone who goes through all of the different stages of grief within one day, and then the next day they wake up, and what is their brain expecting? Oh, this partner that I have spent so many years with is going to be right here in bed with me because that's how it's been for so many years, and oh my God, they're not there. And the brain is effectively trying to go back into time to have this person with them, and it's having to grieve again. It is having to grieve the loss of this person. And this is something that can go on for years. What we can do is go through all of the grief, go through all of the feelings and the emotions, and then be compassionate to ourselves. And in the experience of those who have lost someone near and dear to them, might be a great time to connect with others. For the example of people who are dealing with a maladaptive coping mechanism, what they can do is they can actually use that same creativity that is making this connection to past experiences and saying that this is happening now, and we can go back and say, no, let me give myself what I needed back then. I have seen so many people have incredible experiences by using the power of their creativity to give themselves what they need. If you're one of those people who will just allow yourself to slip into fantasy, like I have done so much, I have spent, oh man, I remember my parents saying that my head was just in another world through like all of middle school and high school. That was a coping mechanism for all of the bullshit that I was dealing with all of the bullying and discrimination and just the lack of acceptance that I received from my peers. We do this because we're trying to give ourselves something better. We can also use this same power to our own detriment, which is where we will create these self-fulfilling prophecies that things are going to go terribly. This conversation I'm going to have with my boss when I go in and I ask for a raise is not going to go well, and they're not going to give me the raise. And so I go in with a lack of confidence and this not having this assurance that I am worthy of this raise. And I go in and I kneecap my ability to ask with confidence and authority that, hey, I actually do a lot of work around here and I believe I deserve more. This is one of those times where what you believe and what you think will impact the way that you interact with others and the world. If you believe that what you are is someone who is going to fail, then guess what? You're going to fail. If you believe that you are someone who is going to succeed, then you're going to succeed. The difference, okay, let's be very transparent here. The difference is if you believe that you're going to succeed, then every single time that you fail is not going to reinforce that you are a failure. It is going to be, I need to get myself up and I need to try again because this is going to happen. In my experience, though, that's not a common mindset for people to walk around with. They tend to expect the worst, and so they're only looking for evidence that denotes what they believe. If you started to change the script and use your creativity to imagine yourself achieving the goals that you want to achieve, then you can very easily find yourself like a lot of these professional athletes who envision themselves winning the game, envision themselves getting the gold medal, envision themselves hitting the target, whatever it is, and making your brain say, hey, I already did that. I can do it again. Because that's really what we're doing here. What we are doing is we are using our creativity to trick our brains into believing you've done this already. You have already succeeded. You have already done whatever the goal is that you want to achieve. This is something that we can do to counter the messages of imposter syndrome, which is something that came up in a conversation that I was having with Libby and Dan earlier today. Imposter syndrome is a terrible thing to wrestle with. If that's something that you do wrestle with, you are in good company. There are many, many people who do, and I still wrestle with it on a daily basis. If I give in to my imposter syndrome and say, you know what, you're not going to be able to do as well as all of these other established and well-known individuals, whether we're talking as a coach, whether I'm talking as a writer, as a creative, whether I'm talking about running a tabletop role-playing game campaign, whether I am talking about being a friend to others. My imposter syndrome will come out, and it will come out strong. But I can also use my creativity to say, no, let's look at this in a different light. Let's look at this through a different scenario. What if we succeeded? What if things turned out well, like so many things in my life have? What if? And these are big what ifs. What if what I am expecting isn't the only potential outcome for this situation? How can I use my creativity to improve my outlook on life? How can I use my creativity in order to give myself a boost in order to progress towards what I ultimately dream and hope to achieve? What if I used this incredible power that we all have, and I used it to help myself instead of hindering? These are the questions that I want to propose to you. What does it look like for you to use your creativity in order to improve your life, improve your outcomes, improve your beliefs about yourself? And this is not something that is going to be easy. This is very challenging. Why? Because we oftentimes have been just giving into our worst case scenario thinking for so long that for many of us, and I am absolutely putting myself in this camp, I oftentimes don't think there is another option. I don't think there is another outcome. And what I want to reassure you is that it doesn't have to be that way. It really does not have to be that way. You can use this incredible power in your creativity to alter where you are going in your life. And if you're like me, one of the big first steps is, how is this hindering me? How am I using my creativity in a way to make things harder on myself, or in a way to sabotage my efforts? Once you can figure some of that out, you can start to make huge strides in improving how you think and feel about yourself, and even think and feel about the world around you. My challenge for you is look at how you are creatively impacting yourself and use that power to improve your life. Even the smallest change can have a big impact on us later down the road. Just start with something small. Trick your brain into believing it has already succeeded and done something in the past. You can do this. Believe me, if it's something that I can do, I believe anyone can do it. And know that you are not alone. There are many, many others who need to reclaim their creativity and start to use it in a way that helps them instead of hinders them. I hope that you found this message inspiring, and hopefully my questions were challenging but not overwhelming at the same time. And until next time, live strong for today.